But first, welcome everybody. This is our first organic, whatever this evolves into. We've been working at this for over 4 years and finally said that enough is enough and we need to put this stuff out here. Project. So that's what this is. So with everything that's going on, we've all been essentially on house arrest to some extent. So we're like, one thing that we always talk about, me and Dennis, we connect with each other a lot. Known Dennis for a long time. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but we just felt it was more important now than ever for us to share some of the things that we have learned throughout our experiences and our journey throughout life and our PhD programs and now as professionals. And so the work that we do is more catered towards self-help and providing care to those and others. So we say, we can't keep this just in our small circles that we work with. We got to bring it back to our family too. So this is our first rendition of Quarantine Snacks, the virtual happy hour with Jaron Jones, Dr. Jones from ilivemighty.com. And you are?
I'm Dr. Socks from Dr. Psychology. Twitter, IG, handles all the same.
Absolutely. And so one of the things we say, we've been talking about quarantine snacks, and we've been talking about, going kind of stir crazy in the house, but how quickly we had to adapt and adjust to fit the needs of the people that we serve. So we can't just leave that there. We want to give everybody else a jump start too. So we say, let's get together, let's throw it on live. We're gonna record this, put it on Facebook for anyone else. And so we encourage you all to share the videos and tell more people about it. We also want to be engaged. So as we're talking, feel free to jump in and type in so we can answer some of the questions that maybe there's something that we can get to you all. So this is just a more so just a service from the both of us where we have had a lot of in-depth long conversations here.
Yes.
Probably should have recorded that. So we're here. We have a little bit of individual projects that we're working on. This is our first joint project. So one of the things that we want to make sure you all did was bring your own beverage. So I guess before we get into the beverage part, Dennis, tell us about yourself, brother. Well, I skipped my drink.
So like Jaron said, I've known Jaron for a long time. For those who don't know, my name's Dennis McLeod. I'm a psychologist over at Vanderbilt. I work at the Osher Center. It's Integrative Medicine Center. But more importantly than that, I've always been a person that's most important for me is helping out Black folks in their mental health. My dissertation was on why Black folks don't go to therapy, what to do about it. Since then, I've been working on other research projects, both kind of in the lab, but also person to person, face to face with folks, trying to find ways to show folks, especially Black folks, the value of going to therapy, the value of mental health in general, whether that's therapy like proper with somebody like me or kind of more informal things which we can talk about, mindfulness, meditation, conversations at the barbershop. We're talking going to church, all those things that really help bolster Black folks and really any folks, but definitely people who need the help the most. So definitely Black folks and their mental health. Like Jaron said, I met Jaron at University of Florida. We were both doing PhD programs.
Go Gators.
Yeah, go Gators, big time. So, I see you, Sheldon, what's happening. But, another brother who went to UF with us. So there's a group of Black folks that went to UF, did their PhDs together. And there's just too much knowledge that we have to not share it and kind of move it around in a way that helps not just us, but also folks who might not be privy to that same information. So those are some of my loves. Those are some of the things that I'm interested in professionally. And then personally, Jaron and I share a couple of things as well. One of those things is we have a love for sneakers. So I told Jay I was gonna bring some heat today, and I had to bring the Holy Grail. had to bring the Grail for you, Jay. So
okay.
I might be a psychologist, but got some on my feet too. So
okay. All right, I see. Okay, well, it's funny because I was going to bring those out because of the story behind why we both talked about why we like, collecting sneakers. So I didn't choose that because I was like, man, I don't know. And I guess that was what it was, same wavelength, brother. So what I did is, I'm a LeBron fan, you know me. So I had to bring some heat too. I had to bring the LeBron 12 EXTs, the King Funk. Crispy, bro. Hey, can't beat them, man. But yeah, bro. So it's interesting talk about it too because we've had conversations just throughout our friendship about how the stories of our lived experiences have kind of helped us to guide us to where we are today, our want and need to help others, and even going back to the sneakers. So while we talk about sneakers and he's Dr. Psychology, this brother has a mad collection of socks that you won't believe. I guarantee you, his shirt matches his socks, and probably his shoes at the same time. Every time it's pretty dope. But one of the things that we found interesting is, we came from spaces where we didn't always have the opportunity to get the shoes that we wanted, but we gave ourselves the understanding and the promise that when we became successful, did the right things the right way, we would reward ourselves with remembering those shoes that we wanted, and now under a budget, collecting the things that we needed. All right, we get to that, Chris. He has what we sipping on.
I see you, Chris.
But yeah, so we also, one of the interesting things that I do too is, both of us do a lot of speaking engagements and talking to the youth. And so when I wear my shoes, I still have on my shirt and tie, sometimes a suit. And so they get to see someone educated. It provides a different narrative, So they see the heat on the feet and they like, he's a doctor, and it's like, yeah, bro, like you can actually make money as a doctor that you can't do some of the things that you probably see on TV. So it's always interesting to be providing those new narratives to our people, especially our black and brown people, because, we have opportunities like technology here that allow us to be able to be connected more than ever. And too often we don't take advantage of that. So that's kind of the backstory of why we'll probably talk about sneakers and socks throughout the entirety of whatever we do moving forward at the beginning. But as we said, it's BYOB. People want to know what we're sipping on. So you want to go first, brother?
Yeah, man. I wasn't going. I don't know if y'all have heard of this before, but what I'm having is something called Purity Vodka. It's been distilled 51 times. Having a mule, Moscow mule with a little Purity Vodka. Check out the glass. This was a Christmas gift from my girl, from the love of my life. The whole world is in my hands right now, so hope y'all having something half as good.
There you go. Well, if this is still 51 times, you probably already on one right now. But so my glass is also the Pierce, this red cup, and my Florida Gator crew, and also my Aggies, Aggie Pride. But inside the cup is a blend of tequila, lime juice, and no sugar added grapefruit juice.
Oh,
so, we're talking about quarantine snacks, bro. Whatever you sipping on, man, you got to make sure the lower the calories, but still knock off, that tequila. You good, bro? So
nice.
On today. That's what I'm saying.
Very nice.
Let me see. I saw what. So let's see. So Trey, I think you said what you pour cognac. Is that what you're doing?
He said
Henny.
Definitely
got to put hashtag Aggie Pride after Henny. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we get into the situation too, I don't want us to overlook some things too. I mentioned North Carolina A&T. Where'd you do your undergrad, sir?
Oh man, it's a little small school, the Morehouse College. Nothing crazy, nothing heavy. A little small school, Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah. Good stuff. So again, we just say all this stuff so HBCU pride is there. We both came from HBCUs, then went to University of Florida, which was a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution.
Right.
And so when you get there, you want to find your tribe. And so we found that through the Black Graduate Student Organization. That's how we found all of our groups of people who really helped propel us when we need to pull on each other to make sure we got through. And so for those, the Trey and the Hannah that are still there, the Bree just finished, like we're still here. We're still with you, push through it. And you still got us here. So just want to throw that out there too. Also, if anyone's interested in graduate school or going to school or know of kids that are thinking about going to school, we love to provide mentorship from even understanding as a parent what the FAFSA is, how to navigate that if your child be a first generation student too. So want to kind of provide that baseline too.
Yeah, that was something that happened earlier today, actually, Jay. I had a conversation, FaceTime call with one of the athletes down here who's interested in doing some psychology work. And I was really excited that someone thought enough of me to forward my information to him, because all I care about is mentorship. I feel like mentorship is the currency of the future. It's the only way we're going to continue to pass along this amazing knowledge and these amazing opportunities. So all I want to do is be able to pass this information forward. So if you guys have any questions about psychology, about doing a PhD in general, about kind of how to get from where you are to where you want to go. I came from a pretty low income background. We'll talk about all that stuff later. I'd love to help you kind of know that you can get from where you are or where you were to where you want to go. So just hit us up any of the ways that we'll let you know later on. Yeah.
And even if you know what major you're thinking about, things that you're interested in, if we aren't from that major, we probably know someone who did it in either undergrad or got the highest level of the PhD in that topic. So we like to link people and network as well. So just know that that's out there. I did my PhD at the University of Florida in leadership development and communications with a focus on storytelling and using storytelling to enhance personal hardiness and self-efficacy in people and leaders. So from that, it's always been service-based, looking within your lived experiences, the thoughts, and your self-reflections to understand how that guides and directs your actions and how you can sometimes be stuck and how you can use tips like narrative therapy, journaling, things like that to help you bounce back in those struggling and those trying times. After that, I was able to work with one of my favorite people in the world, Brandon Tell. We were classmates and started a nonprofit called Self-Narrate. And that's all we did was help people to discover how to share and develop their story, but also with the ultimate aspect to give free workshops in underrepresented populations who couldn't afford those workshops. So we did a lot of work in the school system, helping students find strength in their story, and also, just connecting that there's no right or wrong answer when it's your story. It's your story, so let it be authentic. And one of the big things we push is that your story matters and that everyone has one. And right now, more important than ever, because we are all on house arrest to some extent.
Yeah, locked down.
So I think we knocked off the introductions.
Yeah.
Why are we here today, Dennis?
Well, first off, I wanted to address something I saw in the comments. Hannah said that Mike said that I had a fresh haircut. Who is my barber? He's snitching. And this is something else that me and Jaron have in common. We cut our own hair. So I cut my own, Jaron cuts his own. So y'all don't have to tell the police that we went out and got haircuts. We are our own barbers. So Mike, I'm sorry that you don't do your own.
Let me tell you, that's one of the first tips you can do right now. You might want to get on YouTube.
You got that right. Get a T outline and get an Andis.
You have the time to view it, mess up, and for your hair to grow back when your barber is available. On right. So, we both started, I think, I started right when I got to UF. A couple times. Matter of fact, 2 months ago, the guard came off and nicked myself, so I had a baldy, but you won't see those photos.
Boy.
But yeah.
But yeah, to your question, Jay, we're here for one specific reason, quarantine snacks. The other day, Jan and I were talking. I was lucky enough to have a beautiful girlfriend who went to the grocery store, brought back a bunch of food, and all I'm doing is eating it all. She got pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. It was amazing. And, some honey butter, almond butter, all kind of stuff. And all we do is find ourselves during a time like this, stuck in the cabinet, and also kind of stuck in our heads while we're in that process. So one thing that's come up for me as a therapist with a lot of my patients, and of course come up for me personally as well, is how in the world do you manage being kind of stuck in the house? Jaron made a point earlier when we were meeting around, how we might have some skills and some tools that other people may not be privy to. We both have terminal degrees. We've been through a lot. We've had a lot of changes in life that happen. So Chris is silly. So what we do is that we know kind of how to manage difficulty in some ways, not just from our lived experience, but we have some training on how to manage difficulty and how to help other people manage difficulty. So I figured it might make some sense in order to talk to folks on how in the world do you manage this proverbial house arrest? How do you kind of stay sane in a situation that feels rather insane? And myself as an extrovert, I think this really hits me at home because I want to be outside. I mean, every single day I'm trying to find an excuse that will get me from these four walls outside. But it's really nice to know that there are other people on this planet like Jaron who have some knowledge, who we can be able to disseminate that information, help you all get a feel for like, what do we do when there's a global pandemic and how do we get some semblance of sanity in that process. I think that's really why we wanted to get together today, Jay.
Yeah, bro, I love that. I appreciate you summarizing that because I mean that's definitely the truth, man. It's a space where I think we even reached out to each other last week. We always do constant check-ins, but for me, doing the work that I do within talent development, diversity, and inclusion, a lot of it, I look for some guidance because I don't have that counseling and that training in that space too, right? So there are several spaces where I say, you know, I can coach you to this point, but at some point, in terms of the mental health aspect, I really encourage people to go to a professional. So I love the fact that I have you as a resource where, you know, I kind of help people unpack to find that, hey, I might need some professional help, a little bit more structured help to help me process this in a healthy way. And then sometimes we check in just to make sure that we are that for each other. Just, hey, how are we doing? How are we adjusting? And so I think what might be beneficial to the folks that are out there too is what are some of the things that we talked about that we were going through that first week? I know you mentioned eating all the almond butter and all the snacks. I can tell you from my perspective too. I'll share a few. I was one of those who are fortunate to work from home. So for me, you know, I was getting up, and then I realized I don't have to get up as early because I don't have to drive. You know, so I was getting up, had on kind of my, you know, just my regular, some sweats, a t-shirt, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, you know. But I realized that my production wasn't as efficient as I wanted to be because I was kind of in this lax state. But at the same time, I also started to notice that usually there's this pressure to prove that you're doing work when you're working from home.
Very true.
So I was working well over the hours that I would normally work while I'm at my desk because I'm doing things. I would have breaks where I would stand up. I would go to, you know, I would get a coffee break. I would walk to the farthest part of the building to refill my water bottle, then kind of some laps. Well, here you put yourself in like this space where you're scared to step away from the computer, especially long enough where your Skype turns yellow and it says away because it's like, oh, he's not doing work, you know. So I found myself just overworking, but also feeling like I was in the state of never doing enough.
Yeah, man. I think first off, I saw thanks for doing this. Social distancing doesn't need to be social isolation. I absolutely love that. I think it couldn't have been put together better. I really appreciate that comment. But I totally agree with you, Jay. I think that for me, some of that doesn't just come from not being in the building. Some of that's my stuff that I bring to my profession, right? The idea that I always need to be on. I remember being a kid, man, and we had a dog that was tied up her back. Sorry for my dog lovers. I don't do that anymore. It was just something we did in the hood. But, you know, we had a dog that was tied up our back. And every time that my mom would drive up, Max would start running around and barking and barking and barking.
Wait, what's your dog's name?
Max. My dog's name was Max.
I thought you said Massa. And I was like, that's a whole nother podcast.
Whole different podcast.
Oh, no, brother. Okay. All right, cool. Max.
So Max would start barking, and he would let us know in the house, Mom's here. And sure enough, man, we was as young as like 6, as young as 7. We would start getting ready, right? We'd get downstairs, start cleaning stuff, start straightening up stuff in the house, even if we had cleaned up hours earlier, because the idea was we have to make sure that we're on. We got to make sure that when Mom walks in the house, that the house is clean, because if it ain't clean, guess what?
You in trouble.
You in trouble.
You in trouble.
You getting a whooping. I had enough whoopings. What's happening, Justin? So, you know, so I was like, hey, man, we got to make sure we're on. And that mentality, again, this is part of my work as a psychologist, understanding that mentality has persisted throughout my lifetime. Right. So whether it's a partner coming home, whether it's my dad coming home, whether it's just my boss coming into my office, that perspective lives within me. And as a result, I'm always kind of trying to make sure I'm on. So, I mean, this is an opportunity where, to Jenna's point, we get to get a little bit more autonomy. You can kind of test the waters and say, if I'm doing some work from home stuff and I know that I'm doing a good job, I am enough, then carrying that with you allows you to relax a little bit into what some other folks might be relaxing into that might not look like you, might not have your experiences, might not have your lived experiences. Totally agree with you, bro.
I love that, man. And it's interesting, too, because this actually helps to level the playing field, you know, where there are some things like, I know you mentioned kind of growing up and kind of that, the coaching and just how you were built into your daily actions and routines. Well, you know, for most people of color, we're always told, you know, sometimes you want to be as prepared as you, at all times, you want to be as prepared as you can be. You want to be able to execute. And then we put the pressure on ourselves to say, you know, well, I'm not just representing myself, I'm representing my whole race.
Culture.
And so there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves,
Sure.
on our shoulders there. But here in this space, everyone is isolated and everyone is dealing with something that is unfamiliar. It's something where we're discovering the answers together. And so I feel like the resilience that we've had to practice most of our lives naturally allows us to bounce back and say, okay, you got to snap out of it because you got to figure out how to realign and readjust.
Yeah.
So I know for me, the first thing I did is I had to realize, you know, the sweatpants was good for 3 days, but I'm done. So I would get up because my wife, she still works in a space where, you know, she works in a clean room. So she actually is in a cleaner place than I am. New air every couple of hours. But one of the things that I want to do is make sure I'm a good partner as a husband too, is I would get up, still have my routine. I would make her lunch, make her snacks, and, you know, send her off. And then I would come back, take my shower, put on my clothes as if I was going to work.
Oh, yeah.
And I would designate a space in my home that this is going to be my office. And I'm going to treat it as such. I'm going to sit here in my full, you know, work clothes, and I'm going to go to work. And then I'm also going to remember, hey, if I was at work right now, I've been working for a good hour and a half, I would have gotten up and walked away from my desk now. So now I get up. My kitchen's no longer the kitchen. Mentally, I'm telling myself, this is my break room.
The break room, bro.
It's my break room. That's why I shouldn't eat everybody's quarantine snacks in the break room.
Say it again, Jay. Say it again.
You shouldn't eat everyone's quarantine snacks in the break room. That's not proper etiquette. So you know, it helps me to not eat proper portions, you know. So there's small adjustments that you can make that can help you, you know, kind of realign yourself. But that takes a lot of self-reflection, you know, and I know that that's something that you kind of specialize in too. So in terms of the work environment, creating that space where you feel like you can optimize performance, do you have any tips or advice that you've utilized that work for you or the people that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm new to Nashville, so my apartment is not yet the mansion that my other friends, like my colleague Jerry, may live in. But I haven't. I've yet to achieve such status. So as a result,
move to Dallas. Cost of living is cheap, man. Come on.
But it's taking some getting used to, some flexibility. So that means that I have to find which kind of corner, which room, which part of the room makes the most sense for me to be able to do my work. Also keeping in mind that my work is such that I can't just do it in a park, right? The type of work that I do, we have certain laws, HIPAA laws around confidentiality. I don't want to be talking to somebody about their struggles through stress, trauma, other concerns, and everyone be able to hear that information. So it's been nice to be able to work in a space where I can dedicate a place where I can actually work every single day at the same time. Making sure that I'm a place that not just feels good for the work, but also feels good for my mind. I recall working at a previous job, there was no window in there. So it's really important for me to have a window, have some natural light in the place where I'm working, especially for some of us who haven't done a lot of work from home or who don't work in front of screens so much. I find my eyes to be extremely exhausted most of the times. I don't know about you all, but a lot of days when I'm at the end of my day, I'm feeling beat down a lot more than I would, you know, if I were going into the office. I love what I do, absolutely love my work, and I find that the telehealth or telemedicine approaches seem to be a little bit more taxing. So one of my tips for folks who have to look at screens more, take 10 seconds just looking away from the screen. Even if I'm with a patient, take a few seconds to look away from the screen before I can get back into the groove of things. Because, you know, like I said, as a mental health professional, others who work with people, like I see Tevin's here, some other folks who actually work with people, it can be kind of hard, kind of weird to now be in a space where all of our work with people is virtual. Because when our eyes aren't used to it, we can't catch all the body language we would normally catch when we're doing our work. We really feel like there's a new skill set that's having to be learned. And I'm also looking at it as an opportunity. So, Jaron, to your question, finding ways to think about what I'm doing in the room, in my bedroom or my office, whatever, think about that stuff differently as opposed to being able to change the situation. A major thing that pops up in therapy a lot. If I cannot change the environment, I can change myself. And that is, I think, imperative during this kind of weird time. The last thing I'll say on that, Jaron, is a lot of conversations I've had especially this week for some reason, seem to all be around uncertainty. Hey, Joni, I see you there. Seem to be all around uncertainty. Like a lot of us feel more triggered when we feel uncertain. Most experiences of trauma, most experiences of kind of intense stress, all kind of form around uncertainty. I'm not really sure what happened. Was there something else I could have done differently? Is there the possibility that I could have been, I don't know, more sharp, more wise? Should I be doing something different even? Mm-hmm. And I find that during a time now where COVID-19 is the talk of the times, everything feels uncertain. Our president don't know, our governors don't know, our state senators, no one knows kind of what tomorrow will look like. So this might be a good opportunity for us to hone our skills on how to manage uncertainty. I think it's something that's been helpful for me. It really helps folks manage their anxiety, and interpersonally being aware that you may be more elevated than usual, and your partner and your friends, everybody else may be more elevated as well. So being aware that anxiety is out there, just like COVID's out there. It's important.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up, and I love our conversations because we kind of build off of each other where we continue to kind of pull and just let the conversation move organically, because you hit on some things that I was thinking about, especially when you talked about controlling the environment. One of the things that I coach the employees that I work with is on understanding how to control the controllables. So when you're in this space of extreme, unknowing, that space of the wilderness, you're trying to control things that are probably out of your control. But like you said, how you manage your emotions, the environment that you're operating within, how you're able to look at the opportunity versus the challenge. So when you feel isolated, like someone, I think one of our people who joined said, even though it's social distancing, it's not social isolation. So how can you be the catalyst to create spaces to provide a solution in the places that you're working? So, for me, I did a training yesterday on helping our employees tell their story. So some story development work. In this moment, in this time, it's very important for them to understand, how do I show up in the work that I do, given that I'm not in that space. But also, you mentioned about, understanding that there's trauma there. And I think it brings up a big point of self-awareness. We have a tendency to try and push through trauma and never recognize what that trauma is. Yeah. I know you deal with helping people to navigate that on a daily space. So I think right now, we're seeing all kinds of trauma. People are worried about money. People are worried about health. People are hearing about people passing away, and it doesn't seem like there's a solution. And is this a moment where we need to create space to even acknowledge that there's trauma there? And so how do we do that? Like, how do we get through that?
I don't know about you guys, man, but when I go to the grocery store or wherever, it feels like everybody around me is going through the same thing, which is kind of interesting, right? This is the first time in my lifetime where I've gone into spaces where, whether you're black, purple, green, white, dark brown, light brown, everybody seems to be on the same kind of edge, right? We all kind of have the same feeling, like, what's going on? I don't really know. I want to trust you. I'm not sure, right? That kind of touchiness. And I think that that's important because to Jared's point earlier, trauma has the potential to unify folks. And I think that this is an important time. Again, something like what we're doing here gives us the space to begin to share some tools to help with this unification. I do think that there are some tips and tricks when it comes to trauma. One of the things I talked about earlier today, I'm kind of being a part of this op-ed. And one of the things that we're talking about is how to regulate your body, how to regulate yourself. Oftentimes when you feel traumatized, or you feel anxious, or you feel stressed, the mind starts to run away and the body seems to stay still. So what happens is we want to be able to reunite those two things. One of the things that I do with folks is I just do a real quick, deep breathing exercise, right? I go in through your nose 3 seconds, stop, out through your mouth 3 seconds. We call that box breathing. And that's one way that the body can begin to reintegrate itself in order to get the head back on its shoulders. Other ways that are important, one of the number one things that I talk to folks about is social support. I see my cousin being silly, Dwayne, good to see you, cuz. But one of the things that we do, and above Dwayne, I see Trey, is that we've created these virtual spaces of connectivity. This app, what's the name of the app, Jay? House Party, something like that.
House Party, yeah. Thank you, Trey, for putting us on that today. Didn't know about it.
man, didn't even know about it, but we already having phone calls where all of us are able to get on there and act kind of crazy. Dwayne and the whole family, we had a FaceTime call recently. It's important to make sure that you are kind of reaching across these cities and states, all these places where your family members might actually be, and continue to create a sense of integration, of connection, especially to those things that matter most to you, to those people who matter most to you. In fact, part of this experience with Jaron, with us, is just trying to make sure we both are doing okay, right? Just checking on him. Hey, Jay, you doing all right? How you been? How's the wife? How's the family? How's the house? How's the $500,000? How's the $2 million? How you doing over there? Because I'm trying to make sure I get a little bit of when it's time. But you know, that's the thing, man, is making sure that we can use some of these tools. One of the things I say at the end of all my presentations is about DJ Khaled and how he says they don't want you to eat kale, they don't want you to be healthy, and I try to find some really creative ways to describe that, to describe what he actually means, right?
Right.
People who are healthy, people who sometimes don't look like you, sometimes people who are, you know, in different spaces are doing things that are different than what you're doing. So when my girl brought home pumpkin seeds, I was like, what is this? What is a pumpkin seed?
Right.
And I had it, and I was like, they don't want you to have pumpkin seeds.
I learned something. I should have been on these jumps, right?
Yeah, should have been on, man. I tore them pumpkin seeds up.
Well, no, it's what you said, because, you know, even when I first, you know, really started connecting and cooking with my wife when she was my girlfriend at the time, I realized that I was overcooking my vegetables. Extremely, like I was cooking them to the point where I probably cooked out all the nutrients. You know, it all comes out. And so now it's like you have a whole new, you know, benefit, or a whole new added appreciation for things, you know, from you know, just new opportunities throughout these spaces. I love that. One of the things that I found very beneficial that I do and usually turn to the most when I'm going through spaces of just that space of the wilderness is I journal. A lot of what I do with the work that I do is self-narrate at nonprofit, and a lot of the work that I do within Live Mighty is help people to write more, whether it's, you know, writing it down. I have a ton of journals. Just growing up, my mom always bought me notepads, and I was either drawing in them or I was writing them. So I still have them with me today, you know. But what I like and what I try to express to people is to understand that there's some strength and power in writing it and making it plain. Not thinking about it, give you some time and some space, or maybe it's first thing in the morning, maybe it's at lunch, maybe it's in the afternoon, or where you feel that space of there are so many uncontrollables, or you just kind of pivot. And what I found and what I love in the work that I do is that when you get the opportunity to write your emotions and how you're feeling, maybe it's just free form, just let the pen go. It allows you to look and see what's at the front of your mind, what's being repeated. It also allows you to take that pen and edit things that you don't have to keep.
That's true.
And so there's power in being able to write something and being like, nah, I don't feel that way. You know, but it's not a thought I have to own. You know what I'm saying? And so journaling has been really big for me. And I found that if, like you said, that box breathing, any form of meditation, some people pray, some people meditate, that gets you into a space of outside of your thoughts to allow what's actually how you're actually feeling to be able to come out.
So real, man. I couldn't say it better. A couple recommendations I have for folks that are listening who might benefit from some type of meditation or guided breathing is to get to, I like Insight Timer a lot. They've got about 35,000 or more free meditations. Breathe, Calm, Headspace. All these are great things. I say don't pay for any of them. If you got questions, hit me up. There are lots of ways to get this stuff for free. I could not agree with you more, Jaron. Journaling is extremely important. For me, the reason why it matters so much and the reason I talk about it in my work is because journaling allows you to organize your thoughts. See, that's one of the struggles we have. When we have anxiety, when we have depression, our minds want to go all over the place. But what happens is when you start journaling, you grab this piece and you put it down. You grab that piece and you put it down. And before long, to your point, you can see it all. I saw Tevin talk about doing some coloring, which I really like. Trey saying I like that too, because that's actually been a new wave lately. Art therapy is really making a comeback. And I love seeing that because it's true. Even as adults, we really can benefit from putting our minds to some really, to some skills that we had when we were younger that we haven't lost. It's like riding a bike. I love it, brother. I love it.
I got a social justice coloring book.
Yes, sir.
It's a gift from my good friend Brandon, but hey, it works, bro. It works.
Sir. It allows you, and in fact, some folks use coloring books as a mindful exercise. I see affirmation journals. Thank you so much, Maisha. There are not only affirmation journals out there, there are affirmation meditations. Someone else mentioned going to YouTube. You can do meditation specifically in order to be able to affirm parts of you that might be going unnoticed or under noticed, should I say. So there are lots of tips and tricks out there. I think the point that Jaron and I are making in this section is that there's a lot of stress going on. There's a lot of anxiety. People are isolated, which we know that that's a precursor for depression. There's going to be a lot more depression, whether you're calling it that, whether you call it being sad, feeling blue, feeling down, feeling not so great. The point is that there's going to be a lot more depression, anxiety, and stress hanging around lately. So what that means is we've got to fill up those toolboxes.
Absolutely.
Right? So if it's coloring, if it's journaling, if it's watching YouTube videos, for me, it's watching silly stuff I ain't got to think about. Exercise, me and Jay hold each other accountable. That's what our Apple Watches are about, trying to make sure I see him working.
Bro,
and he see
I
working.
only got this to track my exercise. It's like I can be with a community. So between you, Trey, Mike, we'll share. Like, and a couple other friends, Aggies that are on, and we hold each other accountable. And if we see someone's worked out, we give them a congratulations. It's still protection. So it allows us to say, hey, look, we need accountability partners, not just in exercise, but like you're saying, in being social and not being alone.
Yeah, man, that's so real. It's interesting how technology has the potential to make us feel separated, but we can use it in ways to make us feel close. I see Trey down there tripping because he ain't been working out, so we looking for you, Trey.
Yeah, I've been looking. I work out today. See, I got my exercise in, brother.
I saw you.
Hey, get my weight lifted today. Got some dumb.
I ain't getting done today, but we'll see how it goes after this.
You've been killing it, bro. Fuck with you, man. You've been running miles, man. So, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because even thinking about ways to get outside. We know they're telling us to stay in. It's easier for some than others. Of course, if you're vulnerable, I can't remember the term, immune compromised.
Immunocompromised, right?
You want to make sure that you're trying your best to stay isolated. But for those that can get around outside, you mentioned how beneficial running was for you. And for me, remembering that, hey, I can go outside, like my backyard. And if you have a balcony at your apartment, you can go on your balcony. You need that sunlight. You need that fresh air. You need the light. I mean, even like we talked about setting the environment. Yeah. I go through when I first wake up and open the blinds. I was talking to our cousin Lester yesterday. We open all the blinds wherever we're at when we first get up. You gotta let the light in. I don't know if that's from passing on from grandma and mom and Aunt Faye and everybody. But it's always been a space. If you get up, those blinds better be open. You gotta let that light in.
Yeah, I see.
Remember that.
For sure. Allison, hey, how you doing? I see stuff about vitamin D. It's awesome to open the blinds. There's actually a lot of folks are going through this and there aren't words for it. So I want to make sure I give some voice to seasonal affective disorder, right? SAD. I don't know specifically if it's listed in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, which is where most of our diagnoses come from. I'm sorry, Diagnostic Statistics Manual. That is the place where psychologists usually find, at least psychologists in the United States, find their diagnoses. There are other ones like the ICD. I can't recall what that stands for, but that's one that's used more so internationally. So there are more places where you'll find that throughout the world. But the point is, the seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. What that means is that when you haven't seen the sun for a long time, your body chemically does change, right? And you're not able to experience happiness in the same way. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it definitely is important. One of the places in which I saw this was when I lived in Seattle. I think I told you a while ago.
Yeah, so gray and cloudy.
Exactly. So I went to Morehouse for 4 years, but one of my years, my excuse for graduating a little late was I spent a year at the University of Washington. And when I was there in Seattle, 9 out of 12 months were dark, were gray. There was like a mist of rain in your face. And for those who are from the West Coast, especially kind of Northwest, you know what I'm talking about. But that experience was one that a lot of folks struggle with, just walking around and not seeing the sun. So I learned that certain places in Washington have what they call UV radiation therapy, where you'd walk into a room and they'd flash you with a really bright UV light as if you had seen the sun over some of this time. And the reason that's important, of course, is because the body does respond differently when it is exposed to sunlight. Now, the last little tidbit that I'll give you there is that I found out when I was living in Florida that people in Florida actually tend to have lower vitamin D in their bodies. And the reason is because it's so hot, folks stay inside. So for all my Florida folks who are chilling down there, like, oh, it's too hot to get your ass outside. Go out, go play, do something. Yeah. Because we need the sun. Oh God, my boy Sheldon hit the nail on the head. We are plants. Yeah. And I see stuff saying, I need the light. She does.
So hold on. Before the two, I saw Trey also say buy plants as well. They help to make you happy. You know, you talk about the clean oxygen. So the interesting thing about Trey and Sheldon, Trey is doing his PhD
in strawberry.
Help me out, Trey. He's focusing on peaches right now.
Peaches and
what's your PhD in, brother?
Peaches, strawberry, peaches, PhD in peaches. Is that it? Come on, Trey.
So sad because I have an ag back. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Horticultural science.
There we go.
He's doing his PhD in that, so he understands a little bit more why it's so important to have those. Yeah, cheers, you brother.
The horticultural science.
And Sheldon, Dr. Sheldon Lawrence, who is currently doing work up in North Carolina and teaching at Johnson C. Smith. He was the first Black PhD, not only person into the program, but also to finish his program in plant molecular biology. And if I got that wrong, brother, I am so sorry. He's also one of the oldest and coldest.
Here we go.
So,
I ain't coming for that.
Hey, I give you your time too, brother. But I just said we got to shine light on people who are in the room. So we have a lot of expertise who are in the comments, and even though they sip in Hennessy, we got a lot of information to share with you all. And so,
very true.
Like we talked about earlier, there might be topics where you might send us questions. We might be able to find the people in the network who will be able to answer those questions. 8506, I see you, brother. But also too, so we talked about the plants and you talked about the importance of light, and we are plants and things like that.
Yeah,
like that's so important. And Lisa segue too. So we've talked about ourselves, and we've talked about how we take an introspective perspective. How do we look within, right, and self-reflective, right? One of the things that I think a lot of people that I've heard struggle with too is not only are they trying to get through this themselves, but they're also trying to get through this as maybe they're the person that family, friends, and their community turn to for guidance on how to get. And maybe they lean on them, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally.
Oh, yeah.
And so we talk about this all the time as people who we have a tendency to say, if everyone else is good, I'm good.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that as we provide and give to those who we love, how do we make sure we're practicing a proper balance? Do you have any tips on that? We talk about it, but I want you to kind of share.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this is imperative, not just generally, Jay, but it's also something that's really important, specifically related to COVID, which is, some of us might live with our parents, some of us might live with older people, and there's that fear, right? If I go out and if I run this errand, might I come back, get a family member sick, and then I am the reason why that person has experienced some symptoms. So there's a lot of guilt floating around. There's a lot of struggle kind of floating around in fear, right? People, again, there's this feeling that I need to stay away from family members, and sometimes that's true. I want you to listen to the CDC. I want you to listen to the World Health Organization. These are places where they will give you the best information. Jared and I also shared that we want to make sure that you guys are using reputable sources. So make sure that some of this stuff is refereed, whether it's, articles that you're reading, whether it's, different, media outlets. Just make sure that you're going to the source. I have a good friend, Ron, who would always say, reference the source. So to your point, I just wanted to start there with, making sure that we acknowledge the fact that people have this underlying fear of getting other people sick. And sometimes that is, is definitely well intended and well informed, but just make sure you're well informed as you go about those times. But specifically to your question about being a person who's helping other people, and being a helper, and who helps the helper. I gave a talk a while ago. I haven't seen her just yet, but Dr. Brandy Pritchett Johnson was one of the folks. I love that, Joni. Trust but verify. Absolutely. That was like the motto when I was at the VA. But being able to help yourself while you're helping other people. In fact, some of the research that I did when I was giving that talk with Dr. Johnson, Dr. Pritchett Johnson, was that self-care is a buffer against burnout. So if you're a helper, you're more apt to have burnout. But it's also really important to make sure that you find ways to take care of yourself, both within the job, so setting boundaries, telling people no, knowing how to tell people no, getting support, knowing who to tell no, right? Sometimes you need to tell your boss, no, I'm not going to do that. Other times you just say, yeah, I'm going to do that and seek support. And then there's also that sentiment around being able to take care of yourself outside of the job. So to Jaren's point, exercise, eating well. I mean, I'm sorry, most of the folks I've seen on this call have been Black folks, and Black folks do not have a great track record when it comes to exercise and eating well. Some of that's historical. We can talk about that stuff at another time. But being able to tap into your choices, being able to tap into what you put into your body, what you consume, whether it's through your eyes, whether it's through your ears, whether it's through your mouth, whatever your diet looks like, wanting to make sure that you are in charge of that in a way that is best, most supportive for your healthness and for your wealth. I see Shanae saying, I'm learning to set boundaries. It is difficult at times. And boy, I mean, I tell folks it's hard to set boundaries, but Shanae, here's the bad news. It's even harder to enforce them. When someone goes to breach your boundaries, then it's really, really difficult for you to say, that doesn't work for me, so I have to do this because you didn't do that. But again, this is a skill. This is a process. There's a whole kind of wing of therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. They have some resources, that's Marshall Linehan's work, some resources online specifically around interpersonal effectiveness. And one of the main tools within interpersonal effectiveness, indeed, is boundary setting and how to enforce said boundaries, kind of what you do in relationships. So think about the word personal means me, or means people, interpersonal between people, effectiveness, how to be effective between people in these relationships. And some ways that we can really maximize that stuff is knowing what you need. And in the process of knowing what you need, knowing how to draw a line between you and other people instead of being a people pleaser, which I myself have definitely been guilty of. So some of these skills might be helpful, bro.
I love it too, because one of the things you've always been good in terms of helping me to understand, because there's a thin line that a lot of motivators and coaches cross, where though there should be boundaries in terms of a mental health professional, right? And so for me, I'm always the guy that I'm a motivator, I'm an empower, I'm a coach, but I also recognize that there are things given my position, and you helped to coach me through this. Especially when I was trying to figure out, I want to be there for everybody, but it's taking this toll on me in a certain way. How do I still be there for them? And you helped me to understand that, given my positionality as a person who truly cares about them, loves them, and have lived experiences with them, I'm biased in the advice that I would give them, whether I know it or not. So there are some things where I feel like maybe I can't say, I don't know how to say, or I just won't say. Yeah. And that's where you've helped to coach to say, but if you can bring them the resources where someone who's not aligned to, if I say this, you might not be my friend anymore.
Yeah.
Need it so you can be the person that you want to evolve into be, so you can overcome that trauma rather than revisiting it, or thinking you're fixing, or really you're venting, but you're not really fixing or correcting anything.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, I love that thought. And so it made me change my perspective of not trying to be a problem solver, but create opportunities to somehow get community together again.
Yeah.
So maybe it's, the check-ins, the phone calls, letting people know, but also pushing and saying what you say. There's certain things I really can't speak to, because, I can talk to you up to here, but that sounds like, I don't have the tools to professionally help you process through that in a healthy way. And and I love you. And because I love you, I say, reach out to someone who has more professional alignment in the toolbox to give you the tools you need to fix that problem.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Jay, but there are things that you can offer that will help your friends and family, right? No, my mom used to always say, it ain't no an answer. And I would say, no, it ain't. What you talking about? I wouldn't say it's smack. But, you know what I'm saying? No is an answer. So learning how and when to say no can sometimes help people. It's kind of that concept of, this is kind of an aside, but it makes me think about being a Black man who grew up without a father. A lot, I grew up in the church as well. So some of the stories in the Bible didn't really make full sense to me, because I grew up in a Christian home, because I didn't have that model of a dad that really made sense in order for me to really put the pieces together. As an adult, I know that, but as a kid, I didn't know that stuff. So I guess what I'm learning is like, you know, a father's love or a mother's love or parents' love sometimes looks like no, because they don't want you to hurt yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that we can emulate that as well in positive, healthy relationships, ways in which we can use the word no, or even the actions around no, or boundaries, as some of folks have mentioned before, in order to help strengthen relationships, strengthen individuals, knowing what you need, especially during a time like this. Like, knowing what you need is going to be germane to our success during this process, man.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. It's funny too. We were trying to figure out, we met, you know, we met a few days ago, trying to iron out an agenda and a rubric to see if we had, you know, show notes to help everything flow. And I had put some things down on how to build resilience. And throughout this conversation, we've hit on all those things. I mean, some of the things were, you know, you want to avoid extreme emotions and reactions. You know, so when you give yourself that space, you know, maybe it's that box breathing, maybe it's that meditation, to be in that moment, but making sure you're processing through that moment as comfortable as you can. We talked about being realistic. So we talked about, you know, setting those boundaries. You know, if there are things that are out of your control, why give it all of your time if you can focus that time on the things that you can control and make better? And then one thing I really liked was scheduling in recovery time. That was something that was really powerful for me right now. Like, you know, so think about it right now. Most of us have computer chairs at home that were not built for 8+ hours of sitting, right?
Real.
So everybody found out that first week, I need a new computer chair, or I need a pillow or something. So right now, everybody is realizing that as we're at home, you can take the whole COVID situation of us being in this isolation of, it's that same form of, this is something new that I didn't know I needed to adjust.
Yeah.
But give yourself that time to have recovery time, you know, be able to bounce back, not feel like you have to keep going to the point of burnout, because burnout, I guarantee you, feels real different in this environment.
Yeah, Jay, I would
when you're around some folks.
Yeah, I would add to that, Jay, one thing that even before you can get to what you need, what I love about what you said was around the kind of term that everybody's throwing around is just mindfulness, right? If you are not aware that you're in a chair that does not work for you, you will stay in that chair until your back is tore down. Absolutely. If you're not aware you're in a relationship that is unhealthy, you'll stay in that relationship until you and your kids and your kids and their kids are all traumatized and tore up and destroyed. It all starts with mindfulness, which, you know, one of the things that I find really important when we talk about mindfulness even is to know where it came from, right? These are Buddhist traditions. This is stuff that came from an Eastern culture that we then secularized in the West, and now that we've been able to use. And quite frankly, the mindfulness world does look like white folks sitting on a couch, you know, folding their legs and closing their eyes, which is great. But I think we got to have some Black folks in some of these words.
We're those people. We get to create those new narratives that we talked about, like, you know, the sneakers, the socks. Like, we have the things that we've learned in our classes. The reason I even went and did the PhD in leadership education was to learn things that people were learning in corporations and business and throughout huge organizations, and bring them back home. Because what I found throughout all these classes is that we call it wisdom, but there are, you know, certain terms that you have within therapy, there are terms within leadership theory that we don't know that we've actually modeled those processes. And so it's up to us and everybody on this call to recognize and understand, you know, mindfulness may look a certain way when you look it up. But the key thing is to take the foundations of what is being taught and now apply your story and your environment to it, and evolve it into what the needs of yourself and people around you are.
Absolutely, man. I love the comment. I'm gonna see if I can pull it back up. It was about access. I love that because that's really true, right? That's one of the main goals that I had from the moment I walked in the door at my new job. I've been there 6 months. It's been all about what's happening, Keon. It's about access, like being able to improve access, because what has happened in the past is that these things have been very narrow. The person who brought mindfulness from the East to Western psychology, John Kabat-Zinn, awesome guy, has been around 40 years, I guess 50 years at this point, doing this research and doing this work around mindfulness. But it's not something that is specifically only for folks who look a certain way. However, when we look at the research, when we look at the sample sizes, look at these populations, they don't look like people like us, as if we couldn't benefit from this stuff. So what I've done, myself, I'm involved in teacher training for mindfulness. I've been in a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. Thanks, Trey. Good to see you, brother. Lots of different interventions so that I can become one of the purveyors of this information that might be advantageous for people beyond kind of the status quo or beyond the folks who appropriated this stuff first. And this is stuff we need. The last thing is that mindfulness might look a certain way, right? Meditation, this is what we call formal mindfulness or formal mindful practices. There's lots of informal practices. Like I said, just the word mindfulness, I guess one kind of quick and dirty definition would be awareness. But how do I improve my awareness around what I need?
Right.
How do I improve my internal radar, my barometer for what's going on with me? What do I need in this moment? I love what Steph just said. Sometimes mindfulness can be a privilege as well, I directly access. And having equity, thanks, Josh, and being able to understand when you have privilege, with that privilege, whether you ask for it or not, having the privilege for
So just like we thought, which was interesting too, we hit our hour.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, is that Instagram Live gives you a full 1 hour session before it kind of kicks you off.
Yeah.
I think it's more to make sure people didn't just forget they were live and fell asleep or anything like that. But we're also recording these too. So we're going to have them up and we're going to put them on like Facebook and YouTube so more people can have the resource that we talked about too. But I don't want people to miss what you were saying. You were talking about mindfulness and we were talking about equity. I didn't want you to lose that thought because I thought it was very powerful and needed for people to hear.
No, I hear you, man. I guess my point was mainly that, having, whether it's education, whether it's your male status, being a male, sometimes being Black, is a privilege. And I want to dig into that at another time. But knowing when you have privilege, with that privilege comes some type of responsibility. I got a few more dollars than the next person, then I find it important for me to be able to find ways to help that person that's behind me. And when we don't do that, it's a phenomenon called brain drain, specifically around education, for instance, where I might go off and get some education and then I stay gone. I don't bring it back to the hood. I don't bring it back to the people that I left in order to make them better. So my hope for folks is to first acknowledge, so be mindful, right? To tap into what's going on, what are my privileges. Secondly, to be able to use that information in order to tap into, well, what are my privileges, ways that I can help other people. And third, do something. Do something to help the next person who might not share those same privileges.
It's interesting because,